Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft is out, and he has Stroud off the board at number 2 after Bryce Young. Bryce Young back on top, and he has the Titans trading up to get him. Colts also moving up to 3 and also selecting a quarterback. 3 quarterbacks off the board, just like that. Defensive standouts Will Anderson and Jalen Carter rounding out the top 5 picks in his latest mock. All right, so let's break things down with football analyst Brady Quinn, who joins us now. Brady, it's always interesting to get into the mind of a draft expert like Ryan and hear him discuss how these permutations make sense. It could convince you that anything is possible. What do you make of the idea of the Titans moving up to grab CJ?
Well, there's 2 sides to any trade, right? And so for the Tennessee Titans, it makes some sense. They've got Ryan Tannehill in the last year of his deal. And I'm sure their thought is, if we're going to draft a rookie quarterback, why not have him sit behind a veteran guy who's played some really good football for us that can help teach them how to play the pro game? So the Tennessee Titans standpoint, it makes some sense. You get Mike Vrabel to look at who's a former Ohio State Buckeye. He's looking at his alma mater, and he's seeing the most accurate quarterback in the draft is CJ Stroud, sitting there and saying, I think we can win a lot of football games with this guy. And really, quarterback play, in particular in the playoffs, has been the Achilles heel for the Tennessee Titans. So it makes a lot of sense from that perspective. Where this doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me is with the Houston Texans. But we'll get to what the rest of this first-round mock draft looks like for the Texans and discuss this a little later.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Texans chat coming up here. Ryan going a little bit off the rails here, but you got to take some risk. After 3 QBs go off the board, then we get a run on defensive players. At 6, the Lions grab a chaos-causing partner on the edge with Lucas Van Ness. You're not sold that this is the spot for Van Ness.
Look, he's done a tremendous job since the season has stopped of really putting himself in the position to be considered maybe a top 20 pick, top 15 pick. The problem for me in watching the tape is, even though he's incredibly technically sound, he checks out a lot of boxes as far as the measurables and really just football IQ when you watch him play and effort, all those things you're looking for. There's just not a lot of production. When you really look at the past couple of years as far as sacks go, you don't quite see that. And I know they're not the most team that bases everything off of that. He gets hits, he gets hurries, he gets pressures, all the things you're looking for. He's solid against the run. It just seems a little high for a guy when I think if you got Tyree Wilson at Texas Tech still sitting on the board, which they would in this scenario, that's the player that I would go with. I think he's got a little higher end value, and he's just really touching the surface of what he's capable of. A little longer, a little better burst off of the edge, a little more athletic. Wilson would make more sense as far as Van Ness at this spot. But again, Dan Campbell knows what he wants as far as the type of characteristics he's looking for in a football player. And maybe Van Ness is going to fit better for how they see him being suited. And you put him across from Aiden Hutchinson and let those 2 guys do a lot of damage together.
Ryan has Tyree Wilson going in the very next pick to the Raiders. Lions had that cornerback thing. They addressed that in free agency, signing Cam Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley. So looking edge here in Ryan's latest mock. So you have a couple of moves that, maybe make a little bit of sense. And then Ryan really goes for chaos. The Texans not selecting that quarterback in the first round, trading down to take wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba and offensive tackle Peter Skoronski in back-to-back picks. I like chaos, Brady. But, how do you feel about it in this instance?
Well, look, I love the prospects, right? Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best route runner in this draft class. He'll go in and immediately be able to transition to the NFL game. He's coached by one of the best wide receiver coaches in college football, and Brian Hartline. So he's well prepared, and he's a big need for the Houston Texans. And Peter Skoronski is too. He helps ensure the offensive line gets better protection. But who's Jackson Smith-Njigba catching footballs from? Who's Skoronski protecting? You got Will Levis sitting there on the board right now. He's a first-round talent. I know this past year didn't look quite as good, but there's a lot of reasons for that between the injuries, offensive play calling, lack of protection. Pete will talk about how slow the running back is, even though Chris Rodriguez was one of the more productive running backs in UK history. The reality is Will Levis didn't have the best year, but you shouldn't knock the guy. He's got a tremendous set of skills that I think in the right system and circumstance can really flourish at the next level. So I love the picks, I love the prospects. But the Texans need a quarterback, so I don't see this one happening. If Will Levis is on the board, you'd have to think they'd take him either at that 11 spot and then take Jackson Smith-Njigba, which makes more sense, or, however they want to play it out by taking one of those 2 guys. They obviously, if they make this trade, they control 11 and 12. They can pick in whatever order they want.
Maybe they're making a play for the 2024 quarterback class. But I mean, Brady, when you look at it realistically, I mean, what are the chances the Texans don't take a quarterback in the first round?
I would say slim to none. They have to take a quarterback in the first round, especially when you have 2 picks. I have heard the theory that, hey, maybe they don't go with one at the second pick if they're not in love with any of these guys. And if one of the guys falls to them with their second first-round pick, that could make some sense. At the end of the day, you have to be disciplined to sticking to your draft board. Nick Caserio is one of the smarter front office executives in the NFL. If he looks at this draft class and he doesn't feel like there's a guy there, maybe he's looks to find better value in the second and third rounds. You go through his time with the New England Patriots. He was obviously part of an organization that wasn't spending a first-round pick on a quarterback to replace Tom Brady. They really didn't do that since they drafted Mac Jones. It was second-round picks, third-round picks that eventually would be the successor. So there's that hypothetical, I guess. I just don't see it. I don't know right now if you're a Houston Texans fan, really what you're buying, what you're planning to go see. They need to create some buzz. They've got the draft capital to go find a quarterback, so go get one.
So we get 3 quarterbacks off the board in the first 3 picks, but I mean, what about that 4th quarterback, Will Levis? He falls to the Vikings at 23, a tumble down the board continuing for Levis here, Brady, but this might not be a bad landing spot for him.
No, it could be a perfect landing spot for him. I mean, first off, you look at the play calling of their head coach, Kevin O'Connell. He's one of the better offensive minds. You got Kirk Cousins under contract for a year. So, again, there's no rush to put Will Levis in. And if you think he's a bit of a project, you got time. You're going to watch from one of the more pragmatic, better prepared quarterbacks that's a true pro in Kirk Cousins, who's going to do it the right way. And after this year, if they want to move on from Cousins, they can. They've got Will Levis, sitting there, waiting to take over. And Levis brings that different dimension with his athleticism to the game that just Cousins doesn't have. I'm not saying he's not a good athlete, but he's not the athlete that Will Levis is. And I think Levis also has a bit of a bigger arm as well. So this scenario could make a lot of sense, I think, for Will Levis or even Anthony Richardson if he happened to drop. Given he's only a 1-year starter, has a ton of upside, but some inconsistent tape as well. So either one of those 2 quarterbacks could make some sense for a fit in Minnesota. I think the only question is, if you're looking at the draft board at that point in time, is there not potentially another player of need that you need to stick in right away to be a starter for you in the first round?
Just before the Levis pick, the Ravens take wide receiver Quentin Johnston in Ryan's latest mock. Now, Baltimore signed OBJ on Sunday, but is Johnston just too good to resist here?
Potentially. I mean, I think if you're Eric DeCosta, that's what you're looking at. And also, it might be an olive branch to Lamar Jackson. Hey, we just signed OBJ. There's one. We just drafted another first-round wide receiver. He's got a lot of top-end speed and a ton of ability in Quentin Johnston. Come on back, whether you want to play under the non-exclusive franchise tag or maybe after you sat out there for a while, you've talked to some other teams and no teams, presenting you an offer sheet that's even competitive with our offer. Look what we're trying to build for you. We brought in a new offensive coordinator in the offseason, Todd Monken. He likes to stretch the field vertically. So if there's any indecision on the part of Lamar Jackson about Baltimore and this organization and what they're trying to build. If this scenario played out with OBJ, Quentin Johnston already having Mark Andrews at the tight end spot, you'd have to be pretty happy as a quarterback with the scenario that you're being presented if you are Lamar Jackson.
Rounding out the list of wide receivers taken in the latest first-round mock, the Giants jump on Jordan Addison. Brady, this seems like a good pick given how he excels at all 3 levels and this area of need for the Giants. What say you?
Yeah, no, I love this pick. I mean, I think Jordan Addison is one of the more NFL-ready wide receivers. When you look at his route running ability, his speed, he's a bit undersized, but it's a huge need for the Giants. Day 1 starter, in my opinion. He was obviously productive during his time at Pitt. He was productive at Southern Cal as well. And I think if you're invested into Daniel Jones like the Giants have this offseason, go get him a wide receiver. Go get him more help. He's going to need it because there's a lot of people who are still questioning whether or not Daniel Jones is the guy. It's in part because they didn't have that offensive firepower at the wide receiver spot. So this pick would make a lot of sense. I think, again, he could step in and be a big-time playmaker for the Giants moving forward.
Brady, you're doing a mock draft show tonight with Ryan Wilson and Rick Spielman. Obviously, you're going to be talking about this particular mock draft, but how excited are you to get into that tonight?
Extremely excited. We had the chance to do it over the course of this past weekend. It differs a lot from Ryan Wilson's most recent mock draft. So it'll be a lot of fun. You've got Ryan, Rick Spielman, and myself all kind of making picks, kind of throwing in our own expertise of what we think may happen. There's no trades. at least for this round of the mock draft. But there were a lot of fireworks in regards to some things that happened.
Brady Quinn getting in on the mock drafting fun. That's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time on CBS Sports HQ. Brady, always good to see you, helping us break down Ryan's latest mock draft over on CBSSports.com. There it is. There he is, Ryan Wilson, tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern mock draft special, again, alongside General Manager Rick Spielman and Brady Quinn, as they are each making their own picks for this first round mock. And for more on the man himself, be sure to check out the new podcast with Ryan Wilson and General Manager Rick Spielman with the first pick. The two of them going through mock drafts and breaking down prospects. You can download and follow with the first pick wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.